Could everyone please make their way to their seats? The event will be starting in 1 minute. Thank you. Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming along or tuning in this evening for our annual Dacorum Climate Action Network events. We're very excited to have you here. Before I get started, I just need to go through some quick housekeeping. We are streaming them to the speakers, to the people at home and the screens around the room and the downstairs atrium. And so if there are any technical issues, please do bear with us. There are no planned fire drills, and so if the alarm goes off, please make your way safely out via the exits. There are toilets on both floors, so if you're upstairs, head to the end of the corridor and turn right near the lifts. And if you're downstairs, you'll see signs in the middle of the atrium near the food. Please do help yourself to the buffet and the drinks throughout the night. We ask that you please return all cups to the used cups area when you're finished with them, and put napkins in the bins provided. We also have a number of activities in the atrium for you to take part in. Really recommend milk tasting. We'll be having a number of we have Slido for everyone for the Q&A sessions as well tonight. So instead of raising hands to ask questions, so that it's fair for everyone at home, we just need to get you to download the Slido app or scan the QR codes that are here and put your questions through that way. And then people can upvote questions, and we'll ask those ones after this first set of speakers. As you can see, we have Amy, our photographer, here tonight, who will be taking a range of pictures. If you don't want your picture taken for any reason, please just let her know. If not, please interact by holding up pledge cards and doing lovely things like that for her. Yeah, if you do take any pictures yourself tonight and you think they look pretty great, if you could please email them to us or put them on social media with the hashtag DacorumCan. And finally, to confirm before we start, all slides will be circulated to attendees after the event as well. Also, as many of you know and have already discovered, we've got a really exciting number of organisations with us here today as stallholders. So please do take the time to go and say hello to them and introduce yourselves and find out all of the wonderful things they've been doing around the borough locally. We also have a really good variety of speakers lined up for you tonight who are all involved in environmental projects around Dacorum. So to kick things off, I'll now pass over to our Chief Executive, Claire Hamilton. Thank you.
I think I've pressed the wrong button already. That's not a good start, is it? I'm handing that back to Mel. Good evening, everyone. My name is Claire Hamilton, and I'm Chief Executive here at Dacorum Borough Council. I'm delighted to see so many of you here tonight, and I wish you all a very warm welcome to the council and to our building here. This is a really important issue which, as you know, affects us all, no matter where we are in the world. Last year, at the council, we made the Climate and Ecological Emergency one of our 6 priorities. And on the back of this, we launched the Climate Action Network for Dacorum. And the purpose of this was to bring together local individuals and organisations to think global and act local, which is why it's so great to see so many of you here tonight. With thinking globally in mind, the first of these networking events was held to coincide with COP26. For those of you who may not know, COP stands for Conference of the Parties and was established by the UN nearly 30 years ago as a global climate change conference. Since then, the most important COP was held in Paris 6 years ago and was established by the UN was held 6 years ago. And for the first time, leaders united to sign a single legally binding agreement on cutting greenhouse gas emissions. The aim of the pact is to keep global temperature rise well below 2 degrees centigrade compared to pre-industrial levels, and pursue its efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees. And this became known, I'm sure you all know, as the Paris Agreement. The International Panel on Climate Change recently received a series of reports warning a code red for humanity and stressing that limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees is absolutely required in order to prevent a climate catastrophe. Current pledges, if met, will only limit it to 2.4 degrees. At COP26 last year, negotiations began for how the reductions set out in the Paris Agreement can be achieved, and a new global agreement, the Glasgow Climate Pact, was reached, which made a number of pledges. These included phasing down the use of coal, supporting poorer countries affected by climate change financially, and phasing out subsidies which lower the price of fossil fuels. It also saw additional pledges from world leaders on issues such as stopping deforestation by 2030, cutting methane emissions, and investing in renewable energy. Since then, the IPCC's most recent report has been released with the key message that it's now or never to act. There is a beacon of hope in their report, and this is critical as it highlighted that we do still have a chance to stop the worst of the climate crisis, but only if we act urgently. Right now, as you know, world leaders are getting ready for COP27, which is being held in Egypt next week, and they're going to discuss further commitments that will change the course of history one way or another. I'm excited to see what else will be agreed upon, but no matter what comes out of the talks, the key thing will be that all global citizens will be required to make the proposed changes a reality. We don't yet know how these changes are going to impact the lives of residents in Dacorum, but we do know that any action is better than the alternative of inaction and the potential climate catastrophe that could result. This is why passionate people and organisations such as yourselves will be so important to helping deliver meaningful change. So I would sincerely like to thank you for coming along tonight, and especially to our speakers that you're going to hear from and our stallholders, and I do hope you get to talk to them this evening. I hope that you find the event helpful, I hope you find it inspirational, and I look forward to seeing what the network can achieve in the future. I'm now going to hand back to Mel and our other speakers who are going to give us lots more information about what we've been doing to act locally in the face of the global crisis. Thank you. Thanks, Mel.
Right. Hello again, everyone. So tonight I want to share with you information regarding the borough's emissions and a few things that we have been doing so far as a council on our climate and ecological emergency work. This year we've been working to develop and release our climate and ecological emergency strategy. This has recently been published and is now available on our website if you fancy some light bedtime reading. The strategy sets out the challenges that we face, provides an explanation of our emissions data, and outlines our key objectives. It then delivers an overview of our proposed actions under our 4 key themes. These are transport, energy use, biodiversity, and sustainable communities. Our actions for each of these themes were designed with the carbon management hierarchy in mind, which is avoid, reduce, replace, and finally offset. We also considered our spheres of direct and indirect influence. This is important because as an organisation, we are only responsible for around 1% of direct emissions throughout the borough. For each of the 4 key themes, we outline actions that we will be taking as an organisation to support others within the borough and that individuals can take. As we all know, we are living in a time of unprecedented change, meaning that we must remain flexible in our approach in order to make the best use of developing technology, funding opportunities, and so on. Therefore, the intention of this document is simply to provide a high-level overview to our overall approach. In Dacorum, transport is responsible for 43% of the borough's greenhouse gas emissions. As you can hopefully see from the chart, electric vehicles, which are shown here in green, have a substantially lower carbon footprint compared to petrol and diesel cars, which are shown in dark blue and grey. Which is why supporting the transition to electric vehicles is critical in supporting the borough and reducing its overall emissions. Of course, this is also alongside encouraging more active transport in general, such as walking and cycling. So, because I can't stop myself writing strategies about colourful hierarchies, this year we have also published Dacorum's electric vehicle strategy, which is also available on our website for anyone who's interested. As with the climate strategy, this document also takes a high-level approach about what our objectives are as a council, and that these will be reactive to new technology and policies. The strategy also contains lots of background information and advice in the hope that this will become a useful resource for our residents. I won't say too much more on the EV industry, as I don't want to step on the toes of our next speakers. But I can say that we are currently working on a project which will see the rollout of both fast and rapid EV charge points throughout many of our council-owned car parks in the borough, which are all highlighted here on the map. Funding applications have already been submitted, and we'll be able to provide more of an update on this in the coming months, once we have things like grid applications approved and installation work signed off. Moving on to home energy, a third of Dacorum's greenhouse gas emissions come from our homes. Throughout the year, we've been providing energy efficiency support to both residents and businesses. We successfully acquired social housing decarbonisation funding and are currently in the process of using this money to make a range of retrofit improvements to several blocks of flats, and are in the process of applying for the next wave of funding too. We have joined a Hertfordshire consortium to obtain and promote government funding to eligible residents, such as Sustainable Warmth, to help residents make home energy efficiency improvements worth thousands of pounds. If you would like more information on this, our website is kept up to date with funding opportunities and eligibility criteria, or you can also speak to our home energy stalls who are here this evening. Last year, Dacorum took the lead in launching a free energy efficiency advice app for homeowners, alongside the Energy Saving Trust and the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership. The free and easy-to-use app takes less than 10 minutes to use, and once you are done, a tailored summary report of your energy-saving advice is emailed to you. All of the actions suggested are low or no cost, and previously the average saving was over £75 a year, but the figures used in the app have just been updated as of this week to reflect the rising cost of bills, and so the potential savings will now be even greater. The app has already had over 500 downloads so far, which has enabled us to gather some key insights, such as 1 in 4 households do not yet use LED light bulbs. For those who are able to invest in them, solar panels are a brilliant way to generate renewable energy. They can also lower your carbon footprint and save money on energy bills, something which has obviously become especially pertinent recently. Solar Together Hertfordshire was launched early this year, an initiative led by Hemel Garden Communities, who have a stall here today, which brought together all of the councils in Hertfordshire under one scheme, in conjunction with a company called iChooser. There are many benefits to bulk buying solar panels in this way, and this scheme also supports residents who are interested in installing additional battery storage or electric vehicle charge points as well. The registration period ran throughout August and September, and an auction with pre-vetted installers has already taken place, with personal offers sent out. And although we still have a whole month left of the approval phase, the acceptance phase, we've already had over 1,000 households choose to accept their offer. And so the expectation that their solar panels will be up and running by next summer and generating clean, green energy. If the first round proves to be successful enough, then it is hoped that we will also plan to run the scheme again next year. So if you are interested, please keep an eye out for more detail. The WWF report released last week confirmed that we have lost a staggering 69% of global biodiversity in just 50 years. To help support biodiversity and capture carbon locally in the borough, we are taking a range of actions. Our tree planting programme is ongoing, with the target of planting 5,000 over 5 years. We planted over 1,300 trees last year, and this winter, residents will see 500 young trees being planted in Gadebridge. We have also been supporting Hertfordshire County Council's Your Tree, Our Future giveaway scheme, which has been overwhelmingly positive, with over 46,000 free trees already being claimed by Hertfordshire residents. We also have a number of bug hotels and bee nesting tubes across the borough. The tubes have recently been collected in for the winter and showed us that we have had a highly successful breeding year, with hundreds of bee cocoons ready to hatch in the spring. Mapping has also been completed for a new cut and collect grass cutting regime. From now on, 10% of areas will be left uncut to help to support hibernating insects. We also work in partnership with a number of organisations on various projects throughout the borough, one of which we'll be hearing about in detail later this evening. The UK has lost 97% of its wildflower meadows in less than 100 years. Wildflower meadows and areas of long grass provide a range of essential benefits, such as homes and food sources for pollinators and other wildlife. They can contain up to 40 different species per square metre. They are capable of storing up to 3 tonnes of carbon per hectare, and they're also much better suited to dealing with extremes of wet and heat, such as flooding. We have been actively creating more wildflower-rich and biodiverse grasslands across the borough. To help show residents where these are, we have installed signs and created an interactive wildflower map on our website, which also shows our monitoring sites and key species that can be found in each area. This summer, we also gave away 4,000 free wildflower seed packets to residents, and we ran a primary school competition. Nash Mills Primary School were the lucky winners of the interactive afternoon session with our sustainability team, where pupils helped to build and install a large insect hotel. They got their hands dirty by helping to plant up 3 tubs of pollinator-friendly flowers, set up a bee watering station, and then took it in turns to put down soil and sow seeds in a new designated wildflower area. Each pupil was also provided with a packet of wildflower seeds to take home and plant in their own gardens. Tonight we are giving away wildflower seeds in the atrium downstairs. There are enough for 2 packets per attendee, and so please help yourself to these and enjoy planting them at home in the summer. Dacorum residents recycle more than 54% of what's thrown away in their homes, which is great for supporting the circular economy and reducing emissions, but we want to increase that number even further. Our environmental officers run a range of initiatives throughout the year, and this November they're running a Love Food, Hate Waste challenge to help residents save food and money. There is still time to sign up, so if you are interested, please visit their stall just over here to find out more. We've also recently launched a new zero waste map on our website to help residents find out where they can reduce waste, recycle more, buy secondhand, and find other sustainable shopping options. The textile industry is responsible for 10% of global carbon emissions, making it one of the most polluting industries in the world. Our sustainable close-up events are a great way to slow down fast fashion, and we have been running these for the past 4 years. Our autumn events, held last weekend, were the most successful yet, with over 170 people taking part here in this room, and over 1,400 items being brought along. Leftover clothes were given to vulnerable residents and charities. We have calculated that by encouraging people to swap, not shop, these autumn events alone prevented the equivalent of 8.5 tonnes of carbon dioxide from people buying new items. That's the equivalent of one person taking a return flight from London to Australia. The next swaps will be running in spring, so please keep an eye out for more details. And finally, the reason we're all here today. We launched the Dacorum Climate Action Network a year ago, and are proud to say that we now have 345 individuals signed up and 65 organisations. If you have not yet joined us, there is a link on your event flyer. As one of the key aims of the network is to encourage people to think global and act local, this week we have launched an environmental volunteering map on our website to help connect people to local organisations and groups that have volunteering opportunities which either reduce emissions or help to improve biodiversity. There are a range of different activities to suit different skill sets and interests, and if you would like your group's information to be added to the map, please just send us an email. In 2020, we launched our first Green Community Grant Scheme to enable local groups to take environmental action. The funding has to be used specifically for projects that would deliver the Dacorum Can aims of think global and act local. Ideas could include anything that would help to reduce carbon emissions in the borough, improve sustainability, or increase biodiversity, whilst also engaging with the community. The scheme has now run twice, enabling us to provide further funding to over 15 local groups, with a wide range of projects as outlined here. We have many of our previous grant winners in tonight as both stallholders and speakers, and so I hope you enjoy hearing more about how they have been able to use this funding for their own environmental projects and the exciting things that they have accomplished. Applications are currently open for our third round of Green Community Grant funding. We have a pot of £20,000 and are able to fund a maximum of £3,000 per project. The closing date for applications is Sunday the 20th of November. We have lots of advice and guidance on our website to support with filling in an application. And if you have any ideas for a project that you would like to run past us before submitting an application, we're always happy to help. Please just send us an email. Thank you for listening to what we have been up to in Dacorum. I will now hand over to our next speakers, Steve from Osprey and Ashleigh from Connected Kerb, so that you can learn more about the world of electric vehicles. Thank you.
Hello everybody, good evening. I hope you're all well. Has everyone chosen their favourite milk, most importantly? Fantastic. Or you can move forward. Hi, so I'm Ashleigh Braund. I am Sales Director and one of the original people that helped build Connected Kerb up from a small company full of enthusiastic but fairly crazy founders, engineers and entrepreneurs that had a vision. The first employee, I was the first employee brought into Connected Kerb to actually bring this to the market and make it work. So I've spent my career, I've got 20 years experience dedicated to climate action in both the Wildlife Trust, the National Trust. Loved working in conservation very much, but I felt that now was my time to try and do something for the future. How are we going to make this world work for the future? So moved from conservation into what I'm doing now, and I look forward to telling you exactly why I love my job and how I hope that love and passion is spilling over into what we're doing here in Dacorum. So empowering tomorrow's journey for all. What we do as a company, Connected Kerb, was designed, manufactured and made locally in the UK. In fact, our engineer Nick Doby actually lives in Hertfordshire. We have designed our charge points for the public, for public people, for the masses. So that's infrastructure that deals with the issues around people that don't have a driveway. Those that do, fantastic. You can have a charge point as and when you want. If you live in a flat, a Victorian terrace house, social housing, or shared accommodation, it's very difficult for you to make that transition, make that choice to have an electric vehicle, because where are you going to charge it? If you charge it in destination charges, you're paying a premium. And if you have to hang around and wait for a couple of hours in other locations, it's just not feasible. No one has that time these days. So we as a company have set out to provide that solution to the public that don't have an option to charge anywhere else. What we know as a company is that it needs to be accessible, it needs to be affordable, but more importantly, it needs to be reliable. And that's both for the council, the local authority, but also the end user, the customer that is charging their car. By reliable, we mean that it can't be a problem, it can't be street clutter, it can't be an issue for those that have mobility issues or even well-being issues, mental health issues, charging your car and stuff. It needs to be considered that it's a different way of transport, and people rely on transport for security, for living, and all of that needs to be taken into consideration when we're looking at what the actual solution for this challenge in our life is. So what is that solution? Connected Kerb look at a long-term infrastructure solution. So what we offer to predominantly local authorities who have that public focus is a socket that sits above the ground and is as minimal and discreet as possible. The charger, the brains of that hardware, sits beneath the ground, so away from the public, away from cars bashing it, away from little terrors putting cream eggs into it. It does happen. And by splitting out that hardware solution, what we've done is future-proof. Now, we all know that this is an industry that's moving very, very quickly, and we're not sure exactly what's going to happen in the future. So by having the brains, the USB port, effectively, beneath the ground, it enables us to have the flexibility to swap out that socket and change it as technology develops. So, for example, in 10 years' time, if we're all using induction charging, which would be the ideal consumer experience, because you don't even have to get out of your car, the infrastructure that we've deployed doesn't need to be dug up and thrown into landfill. It can just be changed. The socket can just be changed, and we can keep the solution working throughout the contract term, throughout the service term that we have. It's not a warranty that's going to expire and you're going to see redundant in 3 years' time. We've committed to a service of public charging throughout our partnerships and with clients. So that's one way that we look at it, the hardware itself. But more importantly, to me especially, that's worked with the public my entire life, is the service that we provide. Alongside our charge points, we provide a world-leading customer service in terms of your user experience for the charge points, but also for our clients, which are local authorities. We provide that public engagement, that connection to the public, whether it's through our marketing team, through fun events, through incentives such as borrow an EV for a month. We engage with the local community to help support that transition. It's quite a big step. It's quite a lot of myths, concerns, anxieties that come with purchasing an EV, range anxiety being right up there at the top. We work with the local community and the local authority to try and support an understanding, education, and ultimately bust some of those myths that cause concerns about making that step. So why is this important? Well, we're all here today because the transition to low emission vehicles is really the biggest thing, the most important and impactful decision that we can make. It's where we're going to reduce our carbon footprint the most. And so our design delivers that long-term solution. It's a 15 to 20 years minimum piece of hardware that sits alongside a dedicated team of UK-based customer service professionals that ensure that we are constantly keeping the charge points working, whether it be our service levels that commit to answering the phone in 4 rings or fixing that charge point within an hour of it being reported a fault. So all these things contribute into making sure that that reliability, accessibility and confidence is there for the local consumer when using the service. Our unique deployment design also supports what we know about charging consumers' behaviour. We know that it needs to be close to their home so that they can charge overnight, so that they can charge while they're not doing anything else. We know that it needs to be politically flexible, that it needs to be building on public confidence, because users across the country are going to have different needs, and local authorities also have different assets, different opportunities. We need to be able to flex and understand that not one size fits all in any case. It needs to be minimal disruption to the public, and it can't create an elitist perception where it's only people that can afford to buy EVs that have this premium parking space. So we try and deploy in a way that doesn't take away parking bays from the public, but adds facilities, adds services to them without creating that contentiousness between parking. Because if there's one thing I've learned in my career, there's nothing more contentious than parking spaces, funnily enough. So how are we changing the trajectory? Well, we focus on these 5 topics, and I'm sure these slides will be shared after the meeting, so feel free to read them in detail. But ultimately, we work with local authorities to bring central government funding and our own private funding to deliver charge points across local authorities. We have UK-based investment that enables us to take away the burden of capital investment from local authorities and the burden of operational investment from authorities, without minimising their opportunity to make a sustainable revenue from this as well. However, we ensure that the price that's paid for the charging sits well below the benchmark, that is as low as possible. We all know that the prices are increasing, but we always make sure that it is as low as possible. And as I said, authentic British investment to local authorities to ensure that we're on the cutting edge of climate action and empowering ourselves with the options for change. So thank you guys for listening to me. This is why I love my job. We're actually making a difference here with every small step that we do. Delighted to be installing over 100 charge points in Dacorum car parks at the beginning of 2023. If you have any further questions, please do come and talk to me after. But for now, I'll hand over to my colleague Steve for more information. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask a question, if I might. Who here has got an EV? Okay, great, well done. Who here has at least been in an EV, even if you haven't got one? A lot more. Fabulous. I'll tell you a little bit about myself before I move on to my key slides. I've been driving EVs for 10 years. It's a bit like saying I am an alcoholic. No, I've been driving EVs for more than 10 years. I've done over 250,000 miles. As an early adopter, it was a nightmare. Range anxiety doesn't express it. I had problems. 10 years on, that doesn't fit anymore. The charging networks and infrastructure are really good. So what I wanted to do was show you a little bit around what the differences are, because it's very easy to go down a technical route and start talking facts and figures and all the different kilowatts and bits and pieces. I thought I'd lay it out a little bit. I'm happy to answer any questions later on. I've put outside some sheets on the basics of EV charging, which is something Mel asked me to do because a lot of people have questions. And I thought rather than spending 20 minutes talking it through, you can just read it. It hopefully answers it. So we're working with, we're working with connected Kerb, and there are two key differences on charging, but we're working with lots of organizations. And the reason I put this slide up is to show you an example of the breadth and depth of people that are putting in chargers, whether it's councils, whether it's drive-through restaurants, whether it's major businesses. Lots of people are trying to encourage, exactly as Mel said and your chief executive said, encourage people to move to more sustainable lifestyles. And active travel, walking, cycling is always the best. But a second best, as you saw from Mel's 43% figure of pollution effectively that we're responsible for, will help. So what are the basics on charging? Well, all you really need to know is the bottom of those slides. There's overnight or all-day charging, which is slow charging or fast charging. It takes a while to charge a car. And there's rapid and ultra-rapid charging, a bit like a petrol station. And you'll hear talk of different standards and different connectors. You don't need to worry about it in much the same way as when you go to a petrol station to fill your car up, you know that there is a choice of probably 5 different types of pump. Low octane, high octane, 95, 98, diesel or petrol. It doesn't confuse you, yet when people start looking at EVs, it does tend to confuse them a little bit. You don't need to be worried. There's a European standard charging connector now for either rapid or fast charging, and it fits every single car that's now sold in the UK. So you'll hear a lot of myths and misinformation. Just ignore it. Driving an EV is pretty much like driving a normal car, and there are chargers that will suit and charge your car very quickly while you're doing something that you already want to do. You no longer have to drive to a petrol station to buy overpriced Kit Kat and pay £2 a litre, which works out at 20, 30, 40p a mile to drive your petrol or diesel car. You can fill up at home or at a public charge point from connected Kerb or from Osprey, and your running costs will decrease dramatically. Just to put that into perspective, in the 250,000 miles I've done, I have saved, compared to petrol or diesel, about £37,000 in 10 years. That is after having paid for a more expensive electric car. In fact, I change my car quite frequently. It's a huge saving on money, let alone the benefits. The 2 main types of charging, AC and DC, fast and rapid, that's the amount of time it takes. Fast charging, typically around 6 hours for a charge, rapid charging, 20 to 45 minutes. So you can do it when you parked at work. You can do it when you parked outside your house overnight. You can do it when you go to the cinema, or come to the library, or go to a meeting, or do your shopping. You don't have to waste time going to a petrol station. A couple of facts and figures, because I'm conscious that I've only got a limited time. Facts and figures, there are lots of cars, and the growth of battery electric and plug-in hybrids is huge. Battery electric vehicles are now outselling diesels. That's something that not a lot of people realise. That's the overall figures. You can have a copy of these slides, so I won't dwell on them. This one might be of interest, though. sorts of things that are average now. The average range is 209 miles of an EV. You don't have to plug it in every day, because 200 miles for most people means you plug it in once a week, once every couple of weeks. It's changing. So what are charging stations going to look like across Dacorum, where hopefully you're going to see them? This is a typical charging location. Looks like a car park, because this one actually is at a car park. I'm not going to show you the video that links to this, but it'll be in there if you get it. But it's simple. Just turn up, plug the car in, wave your card at it, your debit or credit card, as long as it's not an American Express, please, and you'll be able to charge. So I'm going to hand over to Malcolm, but I hope that's given you a bit of a flavour. I'm happy to evangelise, and I could spend 2 hours talking to you, but Mel wouldn't let me. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Malcolm Hull. I'm from the Herts and Middlesex branch of Butterfly Conservation. We're a small charity which is dedicated looking after butterflies, moths and their habitats. We're not part of the Wildlife Trust, but we have got a very similar name, and we do work very closely with them. Great to see Heidi and colleagues here tonight. What I'm going to do is just talk about a particular project we've been working on with Dacorum. It's to do with creating a special habitat for butterflies. But before I get onto that, I'll just say a little bit more about how butterflies are doing. Butterfly conservation has been going for about 50 years, and we're incredibly good at recording butterflies and knowing what's going on. And over that 50 years, we know that butterfly numbers in the country as a whole have gone down by 70%. Which is an extraordinary number and really worrying, because butterflies, although we like them because they look very pretty and we'll see them when they're flying around, that their main function in nature is to be as a foodstuff, both particularly when they're caterpillars, but also the adult butterflies. And they're really important to keep populations of bats and birds and all sorts of other creatures going. So a massive crash in butterfly numbers is really worrying for all wildlife. Hertfordshire, unfortunately, is probably doing worse than most other counties. A third of all the species, butterfly species that used to live in Hertfordshire are now locally extinct. And that's compared to probably only 10% across the country as a whole. So things are pretty bad locally. We've had a lot of losses of individual colonies of butterflies across the area. But we are lucky in Hemel Hempstead because we still do have a few rare species that live around here, such as the small blue, the dingy skipper, the chalk carpet is a very attractive dayfly moth as well. These are the ones that we're trying to help with this project. Over the country as a whole, as Mel said, an awful lot of wildflower meadows have been lost. And there are a lot of reasons for this. One of the main ones is agricultural improvements, in more intensive farming methods than they used to be. House building, which Hempstead is probably a good example of, built over a lot of what used to be good butterfly sites, and generally sites being abandoned, reverting to woodland and trees. A lot of meadows are now covered in scrub and brambles, and a lot of fertility in the soil. All these cars that we've just been hearing about that pump out exhaust fumes, they pump loads of nitrogen into the atmosphere, and that has the effect of making the soil very fertile, which you think, oh, that's great for plants, but actually it's good for things like thistles and nettles and brambles. But most of the wildflowers, like poorer soils where the grasses and coarse vegetation can't compete so much. So wildflowers actually need poorer soils. So what we're doing here is, I hope you can see this is a map showing the location of the Butterfly Bank, which is in Springfields off of Galley Hill, which is the big red spot. The green triangle is Shrub Hill Common, which is Hemel Hempstead's excellent dingy skipper colony, which the council look after and manage. And then the blue hexagons a little down towards the bottom are the colonies of the small blue butterfly, which are mostly along the A41 corridor, where it lives on the roadside embankments. So what the idea we're trying to do is to plan for the landscape as a whole. We've got several other sites we're looking at as potential butterfly homes in the area as well. But what we've realised, along with other conservation organisations, is you can't just manage for one little site on its own. You have to look at the whole landscape and try and get lots of sites in an area for these butterflies to live and to do well. This is a sketch just showing the proposal at Springfields. The idea is so on where the green blob is in the middle, to take off the topsoil and effectively to replace it by chalk. So we'll have a layer of chalk that's at least 6 inches thick, and then that will be seeded with wildflowers, particularly choosing species that are attractive to the butterflies that we want. The flowers will come quite quickly, we hope. And then usually the butterflies are pretty good at finding the right plants. They've got a fairly good sense of smell. So if there's a suitable site within a mile or two of where they're living at present, then they should be able to find it under their own steam. This is some photos of the site as it was in the spring. You can see the grass is fairly lush and green, and actually the soils here are quite fertile, which is why we need to remove the topsoil and make a porous soil for the butterfly plants to get established. It doesn't actually look very big on this picture, but it's about 15,000 square feet altogether, about one side of the valley in the field. This is an example of one we did earlier at Chiswell Green, just south of St Albans. And this is just showing the process of digging up the soil, bringing some chalk in, building a bank, and then covering it. The last picture is covered with flowers. And that was the first summer after the bank was built. So it does happen pretty quickly. Obviously, there's benefits for wildlife. You've got two small blues there in the top left, which are the mating pair in Bourne End. Then you've got an orange tip, small copper, and a peacock. These are all the others are more common butterfly species, but in the area, but which will do well. And as I say, it will be good for moths, good for birds, bats, or dragonflies, and all sorts of other wildlife. If you want more information, our website is addressed down at the bottom there, which is Herts and Middlesex Butterflies, and you can find out a lot more there. And there's community benefits as well. Whenever we do a project, we want to make sure that we talk with the local community, that we understand what's going on, and we'll organise public butterfly walks and monitoring over the site, and hopefully get an interpretation board eventually as well. And this is the latest news. As of last Friday, we've started on site. Thanks to Mel and Rob, who's not here, but please pass them on. And Lindsay, who've all helped to get the project going, and that's the lorry. I think that's Matt undoing the turf lorry, and then yeah, the turf cutting starting. So hopefully it will be covered and blooming in wildflowers next summer. We hope. Right, now over to.
Hi, my name is Les Smith, and I've come to talk about a small organisation, a small group of us in Wigginton, which is a small village on the outskirts of Dacorum, called Wigginton 56 Club. And I'll go on to explain why it's a 56 Club. Wigginton, because that's the village that we come from. If you don't know where Wigginton is, it's a mile and a quarter outside Tring. And we've got a wonderful community shop and cafe. If you want to come up there for a cup of tea, come and see us. So the 56 Club was formed out of a village organisation, the so-called Sustainable Wigginton, which came about by villagers who came together one Sunday to discuss what we could do in the village to make the village more sustainable. And one of the areas that we looked at was about food waste, but also about growing your own vegetables and growing your own fruit. So the 56 Club came out of that. Although I have to say at that time, we didn't have a name. The name only came about when someone said, Dacorum have got some money, do you want to apply for it? So we then had to think of a name, and then we had a few days to think of that name. So that's what we were aiming to do, was to encourage communities, to encourage our community to grow their own fruit and vegetables. One thing that's missing off there was also about sharing the fruit and vegetables. So it wasn't just about growing the vegetables. Of course, you don't get much more local than a village of just over 500 homes. So we're thinking very much local and how encouraging people to do that. So that was what we were aiming to do. I'll go on to say, so why the 56 Club? Has anyone any ideas why that could be? No, well, it's also not the rumour that went round the village was it was a group for a dating group, and you had to be over 56, but that wasn't the case. We were looking for a name, and so it came about as a result. At the same time as looking for a name, I saw on Facebook this guy's picture when he was talking about his Bill Millison, who was the father of permaculture. Now, please do not ask me any questions about permaculture. Organic gardening, I can talk about. Permaculture is still lost on me, I'm afraid. But one of the things that really did hit me there was, if only 10% of us do this, that's about production, growing their own vegetables, then everybody can have enough to eat. And so 56 was 10% of the 560 homes that in the village. So that's how it came about. We also called it the 56 Club because it engendered in people asking us why we called it 56, so we could then explain that and get into talking to people about what we were doing.
And it got you the money.
And it got us the money, yes. So what did we do? So we did a number of things. We held an action day. So I think it was in about February, March when we had to make the bid into to get the funding. But we needed to get on fairly quickly. So in March, we held a day of action to try and recruit people. So we'd already decided that we were going to try to aim to get 56 families, and that's what we're aiming for, not only adults, but children in particular. In fact, by the end, we got 63 people signed up for it. We organised a seed swap. My colleague who was involved with me on this told me actually we got over 300 people donated seeds. We also had, on top of that, we bought some seeds with the money that was given kindly to us by Dacorum. We did also get our own seeds, which we then donated. I brought some along, which if anybody wants some seeds, they can happy to share them. We set up a plant shop stand. If you've been to the Wigginton community shop, you'll see it outside there. And that was the aim really for people growing their own vegetables to swap the plants before they planted them. And we had over 600 swaps, which was really, the stand was full most of the time throughout the whole of the summer. It was a big success. We also distributed a monthly e-newsletter, which went out to the 63 people who signed up for the project. And we set up a share a glut stand at the allotment. And although that wasn't as successful, we did have over 30 people donated produce. We also have over 100 people donated produce to the village shop. So that's the plant swap stand, and that's the share your glut stand, which we say was really successful and really captured imagination. What could we have done better? I'm going to rush through these now because I'm getting really late. We could have started earlier. Obviously, the funding, by the time we got the money, I think it was May, and to get people started on growing their own vegetables, we were getting a bit late by then. Fortunately, we had started early in anticipation of getting the money. I don't know what we would have done if we hadn't. I would have been out of pocket, I suppose. Not during the pandemic. So lots of the things that we had planned to do, particularly meetings and action around the village, showing people how to physically do growing your own fruit and vegetables, we couldn't do. Had more involved in the organisation session. Unfortunately, there was only about 4 of us who were actually involved in the organisation as such. And only 2 of us knew anything about vegetables. So it became more and more difficult as it went on. And certainly the second year, we hope to do this year, it became more and more difficult because I had some health problems earlier this year, so we weren't able to do as much as we had hoped this year. And also to hold meetings, which we were unable to do because of the pandemic, and also the costs really during the pandemic, people were asking for lots of money to come and do the meeting. What next? And I'll just run through these quickly. We're going to go again in 23. Going to have the seed swap again and do that, and because it was really, really popular and very, very successful. Another share you've got, Stan, we're going to have one outside the village shop. One of the problems was putting vegetables out in the sun was a problem, so things went off, had the potential of going off, and the shop itself didn't have the room to. Okay, we're going to have an activity meeting a whole day to bring families along with all those other things they could see and things we aim to do there. Okay, and one in September, particularly around harvesting and also cooking. Don't forget, the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, that came out of there, that parents came to us and said, can we spread this to the school? So we set up a gardening club in the school, which has been very successful. And almost half the kids in the school have signed up to be involved in that. We're probably way over time now. So just go. So thank you.
Thank you so much, all our wonderful speakers. Can we have another round of applause for them? As you may have seen with my motions, we are running quite behind schedule. So, but I've seen that there's been lots of wonderful questions coming in. So I'm just trying to look at ones which would have quick answers. We will be sending out, just to clarify with the questions, we will make sure that all of them are answered and sent out over email. So we will get to them. So some quick fire ones. Is Osprey a property company or an EV company?
We're an EV infrastructure company. We work with councils who own the property.
Thank you. Did Connected Kerb approach DBC or vice versa? Probably both.
Dacorum was actually the first ever council that I came to visit 3 years ago, and met with Ben then, but came back around and we kind of met in the middle, I think, at the beginning of this year.
Yes, and it's been a wonderful year ever since. Yes. Thousands of whip trees planted, but thousands of these did not establish. What is the number established? I'm afraid I don't have that information, but I will ask our trees and woodlands officer and get to you. And sorry, trying to read whilst knowing. What can an authority with 10,000 homes do most to tackle the climate emergency? So without having someone from housing here, so I'll just say that we would be looking that there's another question here about fabric first, and are we taking that fabric first approach? And so I would emphasise that absolutely we are. And that's something that our climate strategy does go into more detail on. There is a copy of it printed out and in the atrium downstairs. So if anyone wants to flick through that, if they are curious as to what's in there. Why does Dacorum Borough Council plan a linear route to net zero, exceeding its carbon budget by 100%, yet expect Dacorum residents to make far greater cuts than the council? So just to explain that one, I created a linear route more to show an example of the way down, but once again, within the strategy document, you will see that there's actually the Tyndall Centre have got a curve, and that's the curve that we need to be reaching for. So I do sort of explain that the linear route is more just to sort of show the scale of the slope more than anything. I would say, looking at the time, we're about 15 minutes over, so I will stop there. So please go and enjoy some more of the buffet, chat some more of our wonderful stall holders, and if I could have everyone back, if we say, looking at timings, about 8:05, if everyone could be back here, does that work for everyone? Thank you so much.